Hello, welcome to Craft of the Draft. This episode is brought to you by StatsMap, where you can record your own local footy or basketball scores, put them in the app, and it'll calculate your own fantasy score. You can measure your actual performance, compare yourself with your mates, and bring that fantasy sports excitement to the community or junior levels. If you love sport and want to see how your stats stack up, check out StatsMap, available now on the App Store and Google Play. StatsMap, where every stat counts. And our final episode of 2025, and why not have a look at 2026? We look at what top prospects, the academy boys, the club type prospects, the clubs that set to shape next year's draft. It's going to be an exciting year.
Absolutely. If you're interested in the profile of the 2026 AFL draft class, this is the episode for you. We profile more than a dozen both club-tied and openly available prospects and go through what to expect.
Alrighty, we are into our final episode for 2025. Obviously, this year's draft officially in the rearview mirror, and we'll have plenty coming in 2026. But before we get there, we're certainly going to preview what next year's, draft is going to look like and the road to it. Firstly, how are you feeling after a long year?
Yeah, it's been chaotic. Had some time to breathe, and the draft cycle never stops. Mitch, we straight away move our eyes to 2026, and the route starts here. The road starts here.
Yeah.
All roads leading to 2026. The AFL Academy squad has already been announced, so they'll get the opportunity to go to New Zealand as part of their training camp. First time in close to a decade, they'll get the opportunity to go overseas. So, yeah, we'll profile some of the leading prospects in the 2026 class, some of the club-tied prospects as well, clubs of focus in the 2026 AFL draft. Obviously, so much can change, but yeah, this is how we see it at the moment. And I guess if we look at the overall profile of the class coming into this year, there was that stigma that it was probably a little bit of a weaker class than what we traditionally do expect. Next year, there's a belief that it's stronger than this year. Again, we say so much can change, but the overall pool is looking stronger, and probably particularly a little bit more variety at the top end when you look at the positions that are going to be available to clubs that are picking right at the pointy end of the draft. And there'll be some people who might be frustrated by the fact that the two faces of the draft class are both club tied in Cody Walker to Carlton and Dougie Cochran to Port Adelaide, but plenty behind that to get excited about as well.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, for two clubs in particular, they're going to have some great talent to secure in 12 months' time, but there is plenty of names to focus on. And kind of when you take into probably the pool as we know it. And that's really all we can talk about at this point. You know, when you look at who got picked up at the 2025 draft, we weren't talking about Sullivan Roby until July. Latrell Pickett was maybe a mid-season pop-up option.
Oscar Taylor
too.
Jacob Farrow.
Certainly. Jacob Farrow's another one. Yep. So there's always going to be guys. Harry Cole hadn't had a full year in Sydney's system, and all those guys we just mentioned went in the top 15. So there's going to be guys who come across the radar and fly through it at some point, and that's always going to be one of the more exciting chapters of the draft. But we can really just look at what we know now from a few bottom age and under 16s, maybe champs runs as well, the kids that have put together pretty solid past two seasons. But as a whole, there's maybe, I guess some people might say there's a decent crop of key position players towards the top. That might have been the case for this year as well, though, with where we saw Archie Ludowick, Louis Emmett, Liam Heatherton, Kalani White, Taj Murray, all those AFL Academy boys come into the mix. Cody Curtin, another one. Cooper Duff-Tyler to an extent. He was a bit more of a raw prospect given his balance with basketball, but this year's, or the coming year's crop has an equally or quite a promising profile of key position players towards that top bracket.
Yeah, I think it does. Like, there's the Northern Knights trio, Tate Hodgson, who's a great story, hasn't played any footy this year, but still got included in the AFL Academy after what he did last year for the Northern Knights and Vic Metro as a 16-year-old. Lewis Hounsome as a key position prospect as well, and also Harry Van Haddam, who got to go for Vic Metro, probably headline what the tools are going to look like. Obviously, Dougie Cochran himself is a tall, as much as he's got that hybrid ability to go into the midfield as well. He's 196 centimeters himself, and Jack Pickett from the Geelong Falcons probably really headline that group. But I think what's interesting to look at is if you do look at the last 2 or 3 national drafts, we have probably gone in and thought that Aiden Schubert, Archie Ludowick, some of these boys would be top 10, top 15 talents, but for one reason or another, they don't seem to go as early as we expect. Maybe Aaron Cadman going at pick 1 back in 2021, 2022 is sort of the exception to that rule. But it might be a case of a really good suite of key position players, but that doesn't necessarily translate on draft night with the way that things are going, particularly when you look at rucks. Like, I think there were only 2 rucks taken at the national draft last week, and that wasn't down to, I guess, a lack of quality, but potentially an availability of rucks in other ways to get onto AFL lists, and clubs looking at wanting to get more ready-made prospects if they are looking for that position.
Yeah, and obviously considering key position players now, you have to look at where the game's heading with the speed, the roles that they can play. If it's more than just, if you're ruckman and you're going to be probably playing more than just that, given also extended bench numbers, we'll see clubs call on probably an additional key position player, which is great for, when you're looking at the pool and the likelihood of key position players getting picked up, but you still have to have that variety, that balance, and a few tricks up your sleeve, all in all. The other kind of, I guess, when you profile a draft class is how compromised it might be. That was, I guess, compromise was such a, big word for 2025.
Massive
Not
theme.
expecting it to be as... well, it's hard to see how impactful you think club-type prospects might be, because as we see it, the top 2 boys are tied to Carlton and Port Adelaide in Cody Walker and Dougie Cochran. But after that, it probably opens up a touch. I think in the AFL Academy, there might not have been too many more. Aidan McCartney was one.
I think a lot of people saw Lucas Robinson. A lot of people see Lucas Robinson as a top 10 talent. He missed the AFL Academy, but he's certainly there or thereabouts. Garrison Ken is another one who has put his name up in lights early, but you're probably not saying that he's a top 5, top 10 talent at this stage. So I guess if you do look at the top 10, top 15 boys more holistically, the number is probably less in terms of club-tied talents, but when you still have potentially the top 2 as club-tied talents, it could come across as equally as compromised.
Yeah, I think one thing we'll at least we'll know over the next few months and before maybe even 2026 is how hard it's going to be for clubs to put in bids for boys at the very top 2 with the changes that were made for 2025, and they're expected to get even tougher in matching bids and the process that played out this year. But it wasn't really an issue for many clubs, even though we saw a number of unmatched bids. Let's look at the faces of the 2026 draft class. 2 players we've mentioned at length this year, and we'll do so for the next 12 months. Cody Walker, Dougie Cochran, 2 players who had certainly different seasons, given injury to Dougie forced him out of a bottom-aged under-18s champs with South Australia, while Cody Walker was one of Vic Country's best performers across a 4-game run.
Yeah, he was. Start with Dougie. Such a unique prospect, isn't he? Someone who's got the ability to take big marks up forward. I think we saw that in the sample. There were some really good highlights that were doing the rounds on social media, and it's so compelling to watch, and it's so conducive to, I think, the direction the game's heading, with the fact that he's able to take those marks, but then at 196 centimeters, he's able to then go into the midfield and even defense. We've seen him go into defense and really impact down there, so he can read the game really well. So I think of a quote that, Adrian Caruso and the Giants are big on draft on traits. Like, he seems to have it all. He's got the ability to play on all 3 lines, and I think he's someone that's going to really excite and frustrate clubs that they're not going to get access to him. But it's going to be really interesting to see how Central District do look to develop him, because he seems to be a really well-rounded prospect. It's just a matter of where he does settle and potentially how much midfield time he gets. Can you play midfield sustainably at 196 centimeters? Particularly once he gets some more muscle on his body, that'll be something that they'll have to weigh up.
Certainly rare to see a 16 or 17-year-old, I guess you'd say, playing senior level football. We saw it a little bit with Ezekiel and Dill Patterson, Leo Lombard at Gold Coast, and that's usually, Gold Coast VFL program is a bit more suited to nurturing their academy boys. Sid Draper did it in the Samford, Dyson Sharp too.
Yeah.
So you look at how maybe Central's use Dyson Sharp, playing more of a forward at senior level, but if he's playing at his own level, maybe midfield, and that's where Dougie might be able to kind of showcase both of his range of positions and skill sets. So hopefully it's a full year for him as well, and we get to see him at the champs. He'll certainly be eye-catching for the AFL Academy, and like we said, gets to be one of the boys who has senior experience under his belt when they come up against what's likely to be state league level opposition.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Cody Walker, hailing from the same talent league club as Harley Reid, be great for the Bendigo Pioneers to have 2 top 3, top 5 talents across the course of a 3 or 4 year span, because they didn't have anyone drafted this year, but they do tend to punch above their weight. They're a massive geographic area, and he'll be one that, certainly for Vic Country in the AFL Academy as well, will be really tough, really competitive. Expect him to get a lot of midfield minutes, but I think it's really important for him to continue to show his versatility, because he's not going to be one that starts at AFL level in the midfield. He might not even be one that spends a whole lot of time in the midfield in the first half of his career. It might be a longer term thing that he goes into the midfield, but I think he's got such versatility and such a range of weapons that I'd love to see them all exposed and all on full display.
Yeah, we got enough, or we certainly saw enough at the champs this year as like a pretty central piece to their midfield.
Yeah.
And that's going to go a long way into building confidence for his 2026 season. But like you said, I think one thing that we'll get a good look at this year, and it might come through the AFL Academy, as we often see with such what can be a pretty midfield heavy group, is that they'll Tark and Lockie will move the magnets around a little bit, and we'll get to see some guys in positions we're not as familiar with. And then there's a good chance he gets some VFL opportunities at the Blues. We thought we might have seen it this year, but it's a long road for him, and they already committed to him before they committed to their 2025 boys. That shows how serious the Blues are and how chips in they are on Cody Walker and the talent he'll be. We speak about those two as the faces. If there was a third, if we don't want to just have the 2 club-tied boys as the 2 faces, if there was a third name you'd want to throw into the mix for 2026, who would you have?
I think Archie Butler would be the third one. He's probably at this stage the one that's so exciting, and exciting is the perfect word for him. I think he's someone who plays up forward. He's dynamic at ground level, so hard to beat one-on-one. He's a medium forward and has a big bag of tricks, and he'll go into the midfield, no doubt, as well for the Sandringham Dragons next year. He's one of those players that once he gets a little bit of momentum, he's so hard to stop. He's got the ability to kick 3 goals in 10 minutes. We saw it on multiple occasions for the Sandy Dragons this year. The one thing I'll say about Archie Butler, and it's nothing against him per se, but it will be interesting to see if someone of his profile goes at the absolute top end. Like, I don't know, he's not that, typical small forward like a Nick Watson type or something like that. And he's not obviously a key forward either. He's sort of somewhere in between. So maybe that means his range is a little bit wider at this stage. But I think if you're looking pure talent, there's few who are going to entertain more than what Archie Butler will for the Sandringham Dragons and Vic Metro and the AFL Academy in 2026.
Yeah, great. He'd have to be the third name if you're picking them. Let's have a look at some of the other, top end players. Now, you listed your top 10 for 2026 on zerohanger.com over the weekend. And a few of those boys, like Archie and like Cody, we got to see at the under-18s champs level, at the highest level you can pretty much play for players at their age group. So Jack Pickett was one of them. Harry Van Hatten was one of them. Marlon Neocleus, another. I think Heath Melody played.
I think so. Noah Williams played a game. Yep.
Let's look at maybe... Let's look at the 2 Geelong boys first. Obviously, Noah Williams finished like a house on fire, taking out best of field honours in the Futures game alongside Cody Walker. Was instantly caught the eye with his pace, run, spread, kick, and pretty much just put through a consistent 4 quarters to put his name, I guess, further on the map for 2026.
Yeah, I think the first things you said were pace, run, and kick. And I think if you've got pace, you've got the ability to cover the ground, and you've got a neat kick, that's the foundation that you want to build your game going forward. So he's got all of those. Outside midfielder he was this year for the Geelong Falcons, but expect him to get inside midfield opportunities to build what he can do at the contest, show his strength around the footy. So Noah Williams is one that's going to really excite. And then Jack Pickett as well. Bags of goals for Geelong. He kicked a bag of 7, which highlighted his year, but there were several more bags of 4 or more.
On debut?
Yeah, he kicked 4 on debut. Yep, that's correct. So a mobile marking target who can get separation on the league, get away from his opponent, and as he puts some more muscle on and he's able to really compete one-on-one and develop his strength, he's going to be a real menace at Coates League level and also the national championships next year, I think, and will be really enticing for a club towards the top end seeking a key forward.
Spoke a little bit on Harry Van Hattem and Lewis Handsome earlier. Marlon Neoclis was another one if we're talking the under-17s futures game.
Yeah,
though.
wow.
Caught the eye. Was at 3 from 20-odd disposals.
Yeah.
Just, a bit of excitement as well. A bit of a showman.
Yeah.
Which is, we're seeing at least one every year at this stage.
Yeah.
Obviously a solid year with Gippsland Power. Got to go at Vic Country as well, and looks to kind of follow in the footsteps of the Nick Watsons and the Lockie Doverstons of the AFL draft pathways.
Yeah, unbelievable that he missed out on the AFL Academy. I think that was the one that really stunned everyone because, like he said, he could quite easily have taken out best of field honours in that under-17s futures game, and he's going to be, if Archie Butler's not going to be the most exciting player in the draft class, then it's certainly going to be Marlon Neoclius, who'll split his time between Caulfield Grammar and the Gippsland Power next year. And yeah, he's tough. He'll go into the midfield. He's a goal kicker and he's creative, clever, everything you want from a small forward. So he's the full package, and I think he'll be keen to prove a few people wrong. Maybe if there was, one thing you'd say, he probably didn't finish 2025 as consistently as he started it, but having said that, still did more than enough to showcase why he's so high on some recruiters' radars.
WA's, I guess, squad or likely squad for next year is going to be made up of some club-type boys and some familiar surnames, but Heath Melodies might be their standout, and he's in either bracket in that regard. Another player who featured at under-18s champs, finished off strong with the futures game. A bit more on him. Yeah,
half back, really good kick, balance, can go inside, can go outside, still got a bit of filling out to do, quite agile, athletic, and he's one that I think is probably the leading prospect from Western Australia at this point, and some others would say Lucas Robinson, but some of those, I guess, stoppage-heavy inside midfielders can tend to slip a little bit. We saw it this year with a fair few players, and I think Heath Melody's probably just got a little bit more balance and scope, so I'm looking forward to seeing how his 2026 unfolds. Would love to see him exposed in the midfield as much as possible.
And Aidan McCartney's going to be a player of pretty decent focus, just given he's got ties to North Melbourne as a father-son and a son of Jason, but then obviously given that Jason McCartney's based in Sydney, he's a member of the Swans Academy, so he's, like a few others before him, will have a decision to make with access to 2 clubs. I think Nick Blakey was in the exact same position 8 years ago, and then we've had a few across the course of the year, but what athletic key forward and a prospect that I think might suit both clubs. We know Swans picked up Liam Heatherton and Noah Chamberlain, plus Charlie Curnow helps too. But if he goes down the North Melbourne route, then it's a nice fit for the Roos.
Yeah, it certainly is. And be interesting to know how much of an indication both of those clubs had heading into the 2025 draft about where his mind sort of was. I think you summed it up pretty well. He's mobile and athletic, but he's also probably got, pretty close to the best hands in the draft class. Like, he goes up for a mark, you'd be pretty confident he's going to take it down. So very, very exciting prospect. And we got a little entree of what he can do for Sydney's Academy when they played their quartet of games earlier in the year in the Coates League.
And then we'll round it out. Gabe Patterson, one of SA's standout options for 2026, a medium forward, I guess you'd say, but popped up with plenty of goals for Glenelg this year to put his name on the map. I don't think he broke through for a game. Just given how strong SA's under-18 squad was. They gave very little to the bottom ages, just given the widespread of their top-line boys. But he'll be a key focal point for them in attack. And one of many SA boys who get that chance to step up after being part of the maybe extended squad or kind of watching on throughout the course of their undefeated champs run. But he had a great year as a bottom age in the under-18s. Yeah,
X-Factor dynamic. I think he's one that, if you're casting out 12 months, you'd probably say that behind Dougie Cochran, he's the highest rated South Australian prospect. And real excitement about what he could become. I think he is certainly right in the mix to go in the top 10, if not higher.
He's old mate old man Stephen played. Was it
96 games for Collingwood. So
that'll be a talking
that'll
point.
sting potentially for the Pies.
Hey mates, just dropping in here to tell you a little bit about StatsMap. So you know how we all love tracking the AFL and NBA fantasy stats for the pros, but there's never been anything for your own local games. Well, that's just changed. There's a new app called StatsMap, and it's actually the first of its kind in the world. With StatsMap, you can record your own stats from your local footy or basketball game, and it automatically calculates your fantasy score based on your real-life performance. It's the perfect way to measure how you actually play, compare yourself with your mates, and bring that fantasy sports excitement to community level. Right now, it's built for Aussie rules and basketball, but they're already working on adding rugby league, soccer, netball, and cricket very soon. So follow StatsMap on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok for regular updates. If you love your sport and you want to see how your stats stack up, check out StatsMap. It's available now on the App Store and Google Play. StatsMap, where every stat counts.
All right, a peek at the AFL Academy as a whole. So 25 boys selected. As you mentioned at the top of the show, they'll actually get a trip overseas to New Zealand, along with the girls squad as well. Among the names we probably haven't listed off just yet, Darcy Shedron was one that we got to see a bit of at the Under-18s champs, the Dandenong Stingrays defender. Had some good moments for sure across that, playing at that level on top of his Coates Talent League opportunities. And yeah, I think certainly could have been one in that top 10, top end bracket as well.
Yeah, I'm a big Darcy Shedron advocate. I'm not sure why he's been as unheralded as what he has been, but he's got speed, he's got athleticism, and he reads the game really well. So off half back, I think he's sort of the full package. Because, and then also when he does get the footy, he uses it quite cleanly too. So at 188 centimetres and with the scope to still grow a couple more centimetres, I think he projects as a third tall type defender, might get some opportunities in the midfield as well to show he can win his own footy. But yeah, he's one that I'm really bullish on, and yeah, we saw him get the opportunities, like you said, for Vic Country, and certainly didn't look out of place there. In fact, I think he actually played a couple of important lockdown roles, which showed that defensive application he's got too.
Yeah, well, I guess a good product of Cooper Ramsey's injury was Benji Van Rooyen getting the kind of first string ruck duties for WA, and he came up against Zach Harding against Vic Country as a player 2 years older than him, and then obviously on top of that, you have Cooper Duff-Tyler leading the way for Vic Metro this year, and then All-Australian Sam Ainsworth. So he got a great test as a bottom major and a ruckman for WA this year, and might just be the standout ruck option. Well, they've got a number of ruck options in the AFL Academy, to be fair. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him outside of the ruck, but another tall one with great upside.
Yeah, I was going to say probably the next step and growth for his game is to show what he can do forward of the footy a little bit more, and prove he's got that versatility. Like you said, you need to be that ruck forward nowadays. And at 203 centimetres, he fits the profile perfectly that you'd expect that he can be a ruck. And he showed he could do it this year. And I think he will be the starting ruck for the AFL Academy, but he'll have stiff competition, particularly from Ethan Herbert. So that'll be an interesting one to weigh up. But yeah, he's obviously got his brother, Jacob, to lean on as well at Melbourne. So that'll certainly help his development. One to watch for 2026.
Yeah, another one out of WA, Garrison Ken, club tied to West Coast.
Yep.
Saw a little bit of throughout the year, and more so maybe at the under-16s is the most exposure I've seen. But the futures game was pretty telling.
Yeah.
And a nice way to kind of put a cherry on top of his bottom age year.
Yeah, smooth moving half back. He's one who intercepts really nicely and uses the footy quite well too. And he's got a good turn of pace and quite agile. So I think if the ball's in your back half and it's in his hands, you'd be pretty comfortable. So West Coast will hopefully look to nurture his development quite soundly throughout 2026, because I think he's got plenty of attributes to work with.
Who else we got here from Ethan Herbert, you mentioned as well. Yeah. Another ruckman out of SA. Tanner Armstrong tied to Richmond as an NGA prospect for the Tigers fans who will still be keen on the draft. They haven't got out of this rebuild just yet. What type of player is the Murray Bushranger?
He's someone who was really impressive in the second half of that under-17s futures game. Actually, I think he won 7 clearances in that half alone, and does his best work when the ball is in tight. Probably needs to add a little bit more balance to his game and improve his fundamental skills, kicking efficiency and execution. But I'm a big fan of what he's got and the fact that he's able and willing to win his own ball and also defend. I think that's something to certainly build off, and it'll be exciting to see how his development continues to track.
Should we talk snubs?
We can.
You mentioned Marlon Neoclis is probably the first one that comes to mind, but he certainly wasn't alone. I think two SA boys in particular for me, Carol Matthews-Hampton and Archie Van Dyke, the former even featuring in SA's squad this year more than once. I'm trying to remember how many games he actually played, but
twice, I reckon.
Yeah. I think they're two that certainly stand out for me. Anyone else you kind of want to flag as a unfair snubbing?
I'll flag three, I reckon. Cody Templeton was one that I thought was a little bit unlucky. Came into the season as a really, really good inside midfielder and then built out his forward game. He's a really hard matchup up forward and doesn't need a whole lot of the footy up forward to really hurt you because he's a good mark and he's good at ground level too, and then goes into the midfield really clean. Gus Kennedy, probably a little bit left field, but he's one that everyone around the Dandenong Stingrays is really high on what he can produce, and I think he's got a lot of power and drive off half-back and in the midfield that he's starting to really show he's a clean ball winner too.
Yeah,
and then
I think he was a top 3 in their BNF as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, and I thought he was going to win their BNF. Yeah. So he had a really good season at Coates Talent League level. And then Lockie Hicks won Vic Metro's Under-16s MVP. He was injured for the Under-17s Futures game, otherwise would have featured, and is an inside midfielder who works really hard and is as good overhead as anyone in the draft class when it comes to a midfielder.
Let's talk club type boys, and probably a name you could throw into that bracket of snubs for the AFL Academy was Lucas Robinson.
Absolutely,
Tights of Freo, another one of WA's finest. A few names to certainly consider going into next year as well. Cooper Hodge, we'll have plenty of attention on him, just given a decision between either Brisbane's Academy or Hawthorn as a father-son. Obviously son of champion Hawk Luke Hodge and has been based up in Queensland as a junior. So that's going to be a fascinating one to keep an eye on. Matthew Owen, another one out of Brisbane's Academy. Blake Justice out of Essendon's NGA. Sam Harris, father-son at North Melbourne. Khalid Al-Suki, NGA for the Bulldogs. Harper Banfield, so the son of Drew and the young brother of Charlie, who joined St Kilda at this year's national draft. Another one who's had a pretty good grand final day too. His brother obviously stole the show, but as a bottom major, Harper's had a pretty good season for Claremont. And then Guy Jenkin and Will Jenkin out of Sydney's Academy. Anyone there just in particular you want to kind of give a little bit to?
Yeah, just Blake Justice, I think, from the Calder Cannons, Essendon's NGA. I think he started the season as a little bit of an unknown. Essendon fans might have been optimistic about what he could have produced, but I think even the most one-eyed Bombers fans wouldn't have expected the level of growth that we've seen from him this year. He's played across all three lines, looked really comfortable, goes into the midfield. He's athletic, he's a ball winner, and his kicking efficiency is something that's really caught the eye as well. So he's not just someone who's going to win the hard ball, but when it gets to the outside, he's got that balance to his game as well. And I think once he fills out, that'll take his competitiveness to the next level. So, plenty to get excited about from an Essendon point of view. If he can continue on the trajectory that he's on, it'll be exciting for them, but make it harder to match a bid.
Yeah, if Bombers fans already weren't glued to watching the Calder Cannons, you got Blake and then you got Kobe Buick next year. So, little factory coming out for Essendon via the NGA, and obviously Buick as a father-son for 27. But I'm probably getting a little bit ahead of myself at the moment. Speaking on the Bombers, maybe some of the other clubs that are probably going to be a big focus in 2026. So after, we'll talk about the prospects at length, but the clubs too, and the ones that are probably going to be the most prominent. Obviously, heading into 2025, when you Gold Coast, we're going to be a pretty big player, given their academy boys. Same with Sydney, West Coast, given where they were at heading into the season. As a likely, and Richmond too as a likely, pick one contender, and the Tigers also carrying North Melbourne's pick was a big story for last year. Just starting off the top, Carlton and Port Adelaide will be, as we've spoken about a little bit already, a pretty significant role player in how this year's draft unfolds. Went with a points perspective more than anything for Cody Walker and for Dougie Cochran. They both used the trade period and draft periods to bolster their hands for next year. So when you look at the Blues, they've got their own first rounder as well as Sydney's in that Charlie Curnow trade. They've got a second rounder that's tied to Gold Coast and a second rounder that's tied to North Melbourne, and then a third rounder that's Brisbane's, and then their own fourth. So they're pretty well stocked up. The 2 first rounders almost get them there, but a pair of seconds certainly helps their case. Obviously, we saw the wheeling and dealing they had to do just to get Harry Dean. At what was he, pick 3 overall, and then for Port Adelaide, like we kind of knew they were going to be a pretty quiet one, and they said they were placing a lot of focus on 26 and 27, given the boys that have come through, and their 2027 draft crop is just as exciting as what they're getting in Dougie Cochran next year. But they've got just 1 first round pick, but they do have Carlton second, their own second, a third tied to Gold Coast, and then their own 3rd and 4th. So those 2 clubs have done well to stock up on picks for 2026, and it's a long road, and we'll see how their seasons pan out. But at this stage, they've done a pretty good job.
Yeah, they have. And I guess from a Blues perspective, Jack Ison, just worth mentioning, he obviously went a little bit later than expected as well. So yeah, that always helps. They didn't need to trade out capital from next year as much as perhaps at one stage they would have expected to need to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we thought that they might have had to have bitten into their future picks, and they did the opposite. So that was a big win for them. Obviously, the Curnow trade, not wanted for Blues fans, but they also have Sydney's 2027 selection. So if they need to move into 2026 even further, they can do that with their 2 first round picks and the extent of their other picks they have for 2027. As well. Another club probably worth mentioning is Melbourne. It's going to be interesting to see how their 2026 campaign unfolds, just given the direction their off-season took, the profile of their list, new coach at the helm, and they pocketed Gold Coast's first rounder. So they're one of 2 clubs with 2 first round picks heading into next year. Yeah,
they are. And then I think the others are naturally, like you look at the clubs that finished towards the bottom of the ladder this year. I think West Coast, you would expect that they're going to be towards the bottom again. I think I would like to optimistically think that they're past the absolute ground zero of their rebuild. But you think that they would want to make sure that they're able to capitalize one more time at the draft and then really springboard. Richmond have done so well across the last couple of years with the players they've been able to bring in right at the top end. So if they could get another player or 2 to complement that, and then North Melbourne as well. I think what North Melbourne did through the 2025 draft was really, really important. But yeah, they're an interesting one with where they sit.
Yeah, they still need to tinker a little bit. It's going to be such a fascinating year for them, and how their next 12 months unfolds, and where we'll see them this time next year. Going forward. Probably one thing I probably could have mentioned as well with Port Adelaide is, and this, we won't have to dip into trade news stuff too much, but the Zach Butters situation will play such a significant role in how Port Adelaide's draft planning for the future pans out. If Butters leaves, they'll get a great bounty of selections, and that'll stack them up for not only Dougie Cochran, but potentially other players at the high end level of this year's draft pool, on top of their 2027 crop of Zemes Pilot, Tavita Roden, and Louis Salopek. So that's going to be one, and that's what we saw with the Curnow trades and the Petrarca trades, and how significant of a role they actually end up playing in the draft order and for those clubs. So there'll be several clubs as expected to be such a big focus for their draft years, whether they're down towards the bottom of the competition or not. But we've got a whole season to go, and a whole draft year to go. So
let's bring
excited
it on.
For it. We'll call it there. We'll call it a year. Absolutely wrapped with the involvement we've had from everyone this year on Craft for the Draft, and it's been a nice kind of addition to the Zero Hanger team, and absolutely wrapped to have this project going forward.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks again for everyone that's taken part, commented, added to the experience this year, and we can't wait to see you guys in 2026.